Hello everyone. My name is Suraj, and I will be conducting these weekly live discussion sessions on for the course Foundations of R Software. So, let's wait a couple of more minutes while people are joining, and then I'll start. Please confirm if I am audible, if you can hear me. So, one of you please unmute and let me know if you can hear my voice.
Yes, sir. Very good afternoon, sir. Yes, you are audible, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so it's 1 minute past 5. I think it's a good time to start. So, these live discussion sessions will be held every Saturday from 5 to 6, and I'll basically try to summarize what was covered during the week by the instructor, and then I'll also try to demonstrate the solving of some problems using R software. And if you have faced some difficulty or if you have some specific doubts, then you can ask that here during this session. So, since the first week was concerned more with the basics of the R software, so not more with the usage, but more with how the software has to be installed and about gaining familiarity with the basic setup. So that will be the primary focus of this week's discussion. So I'll start by sharing my screen, and do let me know if at any point of time if I'm inaudible or if the screen disappears. Okay, so you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is, again, this has been mentioned during the week's lectures, but I'll just reiterate that if you want to work with the R software, the most basic thing that you need to install is R itself, which you can get at this website, r-project.org. And as you can see, they recently update their versions. They frequently update their versions. So the latest update is from June. Before that, they released a version in April. And from this website, you can not only download R, but you can find a lot of information. So whether it is about R or you know if you are encountering some bugs, maybe someone else has already reported that, so you can check that. You can check if somebody has reported a bug similar to what you are facing. And of course, you can get involved with the development of R itself if you are interested in that. So there are some developer pages. Now, what is most relevant to beginners is this getting help page. And we'll see that you don't have to go to the website and click on this link to get help. You can do it from within the R console itself. Additionally, there are of course manuals available, there are FAQs available, there's a long list of books available, and there's something called the R journal in which I think they print an issue every month or so. So in that also they cover a lot of relevant stuff. I mean, from different applications, because R is a statistics based software, but it can be used for general purpose usages. Anyways, so the most important one is this link, the CRAN, which is the Comprehensive R Archive Network. So you have to go here, and from here, basically, you can choose a mirror. So mirror is just a shadow link from which you can download the software. Now I have already downloaded it, and I hope all of you have also already downloaded R. Now, small differences in installation are basically based on the operating system. So, say if we go back to the CRAN website, so let's say we pick the India mirror. So you can see the screen, right?
Yes, yes.
So, okay, so if you don't interrupt me, then I'll assume that the screen is visible. So, at any point of time, if let's say I'm talking about the website, but I am showing you the Google Meet screen, then that means the screen sharing is not working properly. So, in those cases, please do not hesitate to stop me. So, now as you can see, there are separate download links for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Now, within Linux, of course, there are different package management tools based on what kind of base you are working with. So, if you are working with a Debian based system or a Red Hat based system, so Debian, usually you install softwares by sudo apt or sudo apt get. Fedora, you do sudo yum or sudo dnf. Ubuntu is Debian based, so again you use the apt manager. Now, let's say if you are working with something else like an Arch Linux based distro or Arch Linux itself, then you will get something called RStudio Desktop or RStudio Server, depending on your choice, from something which is known as the Arch User Repository. But I believe that if you are someone who works with Arch Linux, you're already familiar with the Arch User Repository and how to install packages from there. So, okay, this is one point where our systems may differ, but this is where the difference will end, because R has there are no noticeable differences, I mean, based on what operating system you're working with. So I am working on Mac OS, so I've already installed it. So I'll stop sharing this screen, and I'll now switch to what the R interface looks like after you open it for the first time. So, as you can see, this is the R interface. Now, it may look slightly different on your system if you are using Windows. Again, slightly different if you are using some specific Linux distro. But that's fine. The important thing is, wherever you are, when you double click on the R icon, or if you run the R command from the terminal, what you get is this R console. So now, this R console is nothing but sort of a command line. So you can write commands here, something as simple as 2 plus 2, which, as you can see, gives you the output 4, just like a simple calculator. Or additionally, you can do more complicated things. So I'll explain this in due time. But let's say you are defining a variable a as 2. Now if I call a, it becomes 2. Now I can do things with this variable, a times 2 and so on. So a plus 4 times a. I mean, these are some simple examples, but this is just a very very small subset of things that R can do. So R is not just a calculator. So R can do full-fledged statistical analysis or even big data analysis. Now, before we get into, these discussions will get more involved as the weeks progress. So this week's discussion will stay at a simple, comfortable level. And we can see that in the R interface itself, we have something called help. So remember the website URL that I mentioned, that getting help section in the R website. So if you click on R help, it will basically take you there. And you can search for commands as well. So let's say there is a command in R called mean. So if you search for that, this basically opens a URL in a browser window. I will not do that because I'll explain why not in a moment. But there's a lot of things that you can do in the R console itself. And then if you want to, let's say, write some code. So usually like you do in other programming languages. For example, for Python you write .py scripts, or C you write .c files, and so on. So okay, I think this, if I'm changing this to the untitled window, you can't see the untitled window, right? You can only see the R console.
Yes.
Okay. So let me switch once. Yeah, so this untitled window is what appeared after I clicked on File, New Document. And you can write a bunch of code here and then save it as a .r file, and that can be utilized later. So let's say you want to, because things you write in a console, they are saved in sort of a console history, console command history, but they get deleted once you close the program. So if you want to save a set of commands, then you can write them in a file, and then that file can be run later on. Now, if you have seen the week 2 content, which has also been made available now, you'll see that the first video itself starts with a discussion on RStudio. So this is again just like other programming languages, that you can always write simple code in a text editor, execute it in a console, and then see the effects. Or you can use full-fledged IDEs, integrated development environments. So the same is true for R also. So you can use the R interface, but sometimes it's more convenient to use an IDE, especially when you start working on bigger projects and you want everything in one place. So one of the most popular IDEs for R is RStudio. So let's see how we can get a hold of RStudio. So RStudio is also a free and open source software, so you don't have to pay any money if you want to just use the basic edition of it. So sorry, I think I have jumped a step. I have shared straight to the RStudio screen, not the browser screen. So this is the RStudio website, simply rstudio.com. What you want to do is just click on products and pick RStudio. There is a desktop version, there is a server version. What you want to use is the desktop version. So you can download it from here, and again, this will give you different options for different operating systems. You can choose the free version. So I'm working on a Mac, so it is automatically detecting my system and showing this. And notice that it says that you need to have R installed. So whether you are working with R console or the R interface itself, or whether you are working with the IDE, you still have to download R. So that is a requirement for running RStudio. So I have already installed it. So the next screen that I'll share will basically show you the RStudio interface. So this is what comes up when you open R. There's one slight difference because I've already executed one command, which was to clear this screen. Otherwise, the list of comments that you had seen in the R console automatically appear here as well. Now here also you can look for help, R help, or you can search help. So again, like I was looking for a command called sample, but I did not hit enter. The reason was that would have opened in a separate window. But if I do that in R Studio, wait. Okay. So if I click on R help, this help appears within the R Studio window itself. So the R Studio window has this kind of a structure where you have a console on one side. Now you have this pane where the small window where you can see the environment and the variables defined. Let's say if again I define A is 5, then automatically this comes out. I can clear everything and then everything is gone. So now if I press A, then it will say A not found because I cleared the environment. And you can also use this to import data sets. This shows how much RAM it is using at any given moment. So if you are working on a big project and you suddenly realize that a lot of RAM is being consumed, you can clear your environment and so on. Now, help in R Studio not just gives you the R help, but also it also gives you the R Studio help. So there are several options that you can look at. So we'll basically have discussions around this R Studio. So I did not want to have the first week's discussion on the R interface and then switch to R Studio in the coming weeks. So I'll keep the discussion uniform and stay with R Studio throughout the duration of the course. So now, of course, you can use R as a calculator, but like I said, it has advanced capabilities. So what can you do? I mean, okay, let's say even as a beginner, if you are confused and you want to look for some help, so, and you know, let's say for some reason you are not aware of the fact that, okay, R Studio has these features, or you don't want to open a link in a browser every time, or let's say you are just working in R console, then one simple way to know about things is just to put a question mark next to their name. So let's say there is a command called sample. So if I put a question mark here, so this automatically pops up and this will give you the entire detail. So what this sample is, and it's in the, what's written in the curly braces is the name of the library where this resides. So there is something called the base library, which is already imported when you work on a new project. And of course, so you can see it will describe in detail, so what kind of arguments it takes and what are the variations on this command. So basically the whole documentation appears and can also point you towards some references. It will show you some examples. So you can click on run examples, it will run everything here in the console itself. Now we don't want to get into the details of each of these commands, so I'll just clear the console. Console gets cleared, I mean, just by putting Control plus L, and that will do the job for you. And now you see, since I ran the example, some variables and some functions have been initiated, and that is what is being shown in the global environment. Now again, I can clear them off, and that goes away. Another way to look at examples is just put example, and what do you want to see an example for? Of course, in double quotes. And then if you click, and this will run an example for you. Now, of course, if you are familiar with programming in general, you know that not all the functionality, I mean, there are two things that we don't want to do. We don't want to rewrite code for simple tasks again and again. And second thing, we don't want to write all the code, even for general purpose things, in a single file. So what we usually do is divide them into libraries which are designed for specific purposes. And each of these libraries contain some, set of tools, whether they are some data or some functions. And then when you call that specific library for that specific purpose, then you can utilize those functions to achieve the task that you want to do. Okay, so like I said, the base package is already installed, and RStudio helps you to see what packages are installed. If you just here click on packages, and of course by clicking on files, it can show you where you are in the directory and what are the other folders there. Let's say if you look at packages, now this is the list of all the packages that are installed in my system. Now the ones with a tick next to them, like base, so those are already loaded. If I want to include others, I will have to call a library function on them. So, but before that, the question becomes, so in your systems, if you are installing R or RStudio for the first time, you will not have all these libraries. So the question becomes, how do we install these libraries? Now, one way is that again you can go back to the CRAN, the Comprehensive R Archive Network website, and from the website you can try to find the library, download it and put it in the the applications folder within the R interface. But that is a more complicated task. One simple way to do this is say install.packages, and then you can name the package that you want to install. So let's say I put a name which I know is already here, so that this does not take a lot of time. So this was just to demonstrate that if graphics had not been there, it would have come up, but this is already a base package and it's advised not to update it. So okay, let's try something else. Let's try this one, ggplot2. And after this, if I want to use ggplot, so now you see there's a tick mark next to ggplot2. So the library command basically loads the installed packages. So this is important if you want to. This is similar to if you have used Python, you use import, or in C and C++ you add header files that #include. Well, this library command serves the same purpose. Now, of course, you don't just want to install packages. The other thing you can do is update. So it's just a simple variation on this syntax. So update dot. So this is another good thing about RStudio, that if you write a command in the console, let's say the moment you add this dot next to it, then it gives you a list of available commands. Okay, I think one of you is not muted, so if you don't have a question, please mute yourself.
Sir, I have a question.
Okay,
Sir,
okay.
how do we come to know that which of the packages are already there, which one is the base package or not?
What packages are there in the base package? So
Yes, sir. I mean, suppose package X I am going to install. I mean, how do I know? How do I ensure that that package has already been installed or not?
So let's say you don't know
if
that. Let's say you don't know
Yes.
that, and you click
Yes, sir.
this install.packages command. If it is already installed, it will suggest that either you should consider updating it, or it will say that, okay, this is already installed. You'll get an error basically.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir.
So the good thing about all of these commands is that even if you, let's say, make a mistake, that's fine. It will just say that, okay, this command is wrong. So, but you can get to the right command. Again, just focus on this. The moment you put update dot, it shows you that there is an update dot packages command, but not update dot package command. Now even after this, you don't know what to write here. So let's say, so the simple solution is you just put a question mark next to it and it will show you. It will give you an example at the end. Okay, this one doesn't have an example. But you'll get a detailed documentation on how to use a particular command. So there is no need to worry if you are unfamiliar with a command. You can always get help on it from the R documentation. And now let's say the third thing that we can usually do with packages. Now sometimes it happens because this is an open source project. A lot of people write these codes for these packages and these libraries. So sometimes it may happen that the development for a certain package has stopped. Or maybe the developers switched to a different project. Or two or more libraries which used to be distinct and different have now combined. Sorry?
Sir, Tanay here. Sorry to interrupt. Sir, but I have a doubt. Sir, actually, I have already installed the R Studio. It's still there in my desktop only.
Yeah.
Sir, but if I write some command, okay.
Yeah.
So, how can I implement it? Like, how to start the coding part? I'm asking about that.
Okay. So, you basically write code and you add a new file called an R script. So, if you are familiar with compiled languages and you are thinking of preparing a file where you'll write all your code and then run the file, it will do a certain task. And you'll basically write something called an R script. Okay.
Sir, the way you started, no, like the calculation, how can I see in the R Studio about that? I'm asking about that. Like you did the calculation, no, about writing something and doing.
Okay,
Like you got the answer also, like that.
The moment you open R Studio, right?
Yes, sir.
So this left-hand column, this is called the console.
Okay.
Okay, and if you are familiar with, let's say Linux or Unix programming environments, and you are familiar
Sir, I'm
with
not familiar with coding only. Like I'm.
Okay. So you're not familiar with what a console is, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this console basically does everything. So you can write a command here itself. You'll see this angular, this greater than symbol, or you can call it a angle bracket.
Yes.
Like,
Yes, sir.
and whatever command you want to execute, you basically write next to it. So if I want to execute, let's say, if I want to write 2 plus 2, right? So I'll just enter, it will give me an answer.
Okay, so after writing 2 plus 2, we have to write, we have to enter, then it will automatically come, right?
Yeah, like a simple calculator.
Okay.
Now let's say you have something more complicated. Let's say I define a die, and let's assume it's a 6-sided die. So this will be a sequence of numbers from 1 to 6. Okay, you'll come across these kind of definitions and these kind of expressions in I think in week 2 itself, but this is just to show how you implement some formulas, so, or some functions. So die, I am thinking of a 6-sided die. This arrow symbol basically binds these values to this name. Basically how you define let x equals to 5, or in some languages you write int. If you want to define an integer, int x equals to 5. You put a semicolon or not put a semicolon depending on the language. So this is how you are defining a sort of a vector of 6 entries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see the moment you click enter, here on the right hand side, it shows that you have defined a variable called die, which is an integer collection of 6 values, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now if I want to execute a function, let's say I want to take the mean. So what it does is, so it takes the entire vector and it calculates the mean and spits that out. In other words, you could have just written in, like in a coding language, what would you have done? You would have defined something sum equals to 0 and number is the ith entry of die, and then you would have gone, okay, sum plus equals die I, and then you have looped over it. So ultimately the sum would have been 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, and then You divide by the number of entries, which is also 6. So 42, no, sorry, not 42. 21 divided by 6 would have given you 3.5. So here that is automatically happening through this mean command. And if you want to know more about the mean command, you can just put question mark mean. And it will.
So the file you downloaded, that ggplot2, I'm using it in Windows. I'm using the R in Windows. I'm not finding this file in package you downloaded, packages. So if I want to download the ggplot2, what can I do? As it is not showing
Just
my
compare
package.
with what you are seeing in my screen. Did you use the same command? Or is there a spelling mismatch? Please compare that.
Actually, I was searching it in packages options, and it's not there.
No. So
in
in
my
packages
Windows.
option, what you see is what's already been installed. So ggplot2 was already installed on my system. So what it shows here is what's already been installed, and
Said box which are not ticked. They are not installed in a machine, right?
no. So most likely you only have the base package installed. So what you are seeing on my screen is not the default way it appears after first install. So
Sir, whatever you did just right now, no, in a Windows 11, if I am writing the 2 plus 2 like that, no, without any space,
yeah.
and I'm putting enter, no, then it is not coming anything. There is nothing. Like if I'm, it is going to a direct second command. Like that, you got the answer directly, no? And mine it is not working. I don't know why. So, sir, can I share the screen for a moment?
So are you okay? Let's see. I'll stop sharing and you can go ahead. You can share your screen.
Yes, sir.
You can go ahead and share your screen. I've stopped sharing my screen.
Sir, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it now.
So, see, here I wrote 2 plus 2.
Okay.
RStudio.
So this is not the console. This is actually an untitled document, which you would have written a full code in and then saved it. So you can click the cross mark and close that. Not the full
Okay.
thing. Not the full thing. Okay.
Sir, I closed it.
Now open RStudio once again.
1 second, sir.
Yeah.
RStudio, right?
Yeah.
R 4.2.1.
Yeah. It's the.
Okay, sir. 1 second. It just
No, you have opened the R interface, not the RStudio. You have to open RStudio because that's where you had the doubt.
okay. 1 second. RStudio. Sir, it's still showing untitled only.
Yeah, share your screen, so I'll be able to describe it then.
Yes, sir.
See, the untitled that you are seeing, that is an untitled document. That is not the console where I wrote the command. So there is a cross mark next to untitled, not the big cross mark in the right hand corner. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Don't save.
don't say. Okay.
This is the console.
Okay. So, here I have to write 2 plus 2, right?
Yeah. Here if you write 2 plus 2, then it will work fine.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. You can stop sharing your screen. So I'll go back to.
Sure, done, sir.
Now, let's say for a moment, if you are stuck with this R script, you can see this untitled one. Okay, so if I write 2 plus 2 here, how would I run it ultimately? That's a good question. And what you do is you just click here, run. So it ran the command which was there. Okay, now here we had not saved the file. Let's write something different so that 2 plus 2 will create confusion. See, you see what's happening? You're writing here, but it's getting executed here in the console. Let's say I write more commands, 3 times 8 for instance. So it is executing the last command which is written here. Now usually we don't want that, so when we create our scripts, are defined in a, those are written in a well-defined manner. So either you define a function there or you define a set of functions. So once you run it, those functions become available to the environment and then you can call those functions. Or maybe you define some variables here. So let's say I make it A is 3 plus 2 and B is 3 times 8. Okay, so if I run it, okay, it's still calling just the last one. Okay, we'll get to this later. So I don't want to save this. But R scripts will become handy when you start writing longer programs and,
So this R script is used for data analysis, right?
It's for data analysis, yes. That's why you see commands like mean already built up. So mean is just a very simple example. Mean, median, mode, all those statistical, what do we call them? Statistical calculations that you can do. So you don't have to write specific commands for that. And the general purpose usage is that you can have big data sets and you not only want to get some inference out of that. So first of all, you want to see that if the data is fitting into some patterns, and then based on those patterns, you want to make some comments. So usually, why do we study statistics? Because theoretically we can make some hypothesis, or we can, present some models trying to explain some natural phenomena or some experimental results. But sometimes more than one model can explain this first set of data, but there comes a second set of data which maybe negates one of those models, or maybe doesn't do it completely. So it says that, okay, some of the hypotheses are wrong, but some other ones are valid. So that's why we need to do a data analysis. But data analysis involves several steps. So first of all, you can't just take data and make a graph and be done with it. So even when you start with a data set, the first thing you have to do is clean the data. So R has inbuilt capabilities for that also. I mean, there are libraries for that. So what do we mean by cleaning the data, and how to clean the data? So how to pick up what's actually relevant and get rid of the, extra information. And then secondly, R allows you to, so I think Sir has mentioned this in the lecture videos. R has graphical capabilities. So you can make different kinds of plots. You can make line plots, histograms, pie charts, and all sorts of things. So that will present your results about the data. So yeah, R is a very involved and very mature programming environment, so where you can accomplish a lot. And another good thing is, let's say you are comfortable with a different programming language like Python or C, then R allows bilateral interfaces. So within R code, you can call sometimes C code or Python code if that is needed. Or from within Python code, sometimes you can call R code if that is needed. But of course, those are very advanced applications, so we will not get into those. But it's good to know that R is quite capable in that sense. So now, as far as the basics go, and if you're working with RStudio and if you've been following along so far, you can see that you can run commands in the console. There are a few more things. Like one I've already hinted at, this 1:6 basically defines a range. Now this doesn't have to start at 1. So this can define any kind of range, let's say 120 to 200. That's what I want to define. This will automatically create this range of numbers from 120 to 200 and no step specified so far. Now a few more tidbits about the about the console. So like I mentioned that for clearing the console, so sometimes you don't want to, if you have written too much here, you don't want to scroll up and down again and again. So what you can do is simply Control and L. So Control L works on Windows, works on Mac OS, and works on Linux. So that is a universal command for clearing the console. Now I'll show the example of a short command, but this.
Sir, excuse me, sir. I have one question related to this R console and R script.
Sure. Please go ahead. What is your
Can
question?
I ask, sir?
Yeah. Please ask the question.
Sir, if we can run the command in R console itself, then what is the use of then R script? I mean, I can't understand the R script and R
So
console. What is the difference?
the difference is this, that R console
you,
is good for small analysis. Okay. Now sometimes, like I say, let's say you are working with a data which has, the data is collected in sort of a matrix. So if it is a 3x3 matrix, you can enter the entries in the console itself, define a matrix and do some mathematics with that. Maybe do some statistical analysis as well. That is simple. But let's say you are working with a data which is 100 times 100 matrix or even larger, 1000 times 1000. First of all, entering all of that into the console is not practical. And you don't want to waste your time. So you directly want to use a function that loads that data, and you want to work with function that automatically manipulates that data and does a lot of things with it. Now, some of these functions are already defined in libraries, and the way these libraries are written, these libraries are also sort of R scripts. So what exactly you do with an R script is you define variables, functions, or multiple functions that you want to reuse again and again, but don't want to define again and again. So R script is helpful for reusability and reproducibility of the whole analysis. Okay, so you pick what's useful and you know that you are going
Yes,
to
sir,
need it
understood,
again and
sir.
again.
Thank you, sir.
So you will save all that code in R script. And if in a specific session, if in a specific analysis you want that functionality, you will run the script and make all of that available. And if you don't want it, then you can just use the console. But yeah, R script becomes important when the nature of your analysis becomes more complicated. Okay, now a few more things about the console.
Work in R console.
Sorry.
Sir, can we save work in R console?
Okay, so what you can do, okay, so far whatever I have done, I have not saved anything, but if you click on file and a new project, right? So R console sometimes saves the command history, so you can click the up arrow and go to the previous commands that you've done. Now one more thing that you can do is sometimes you can define a project. So okay, so you see it gives me an option of, okay, let's start by saving it. It's asking me to save the current workspace image to our data. Now what it will save there, it will probably save some of the variables that I uploaded. I don't want to do that, but you can create an R project and then let's call it demo. Create the project. You see, whatever I am writing here is automatically saved in demo. Now if I leave it like this, let's say A is 1, okay, and then I save this, let's say what happens to the R project demo. Okay, I'm not sure about this, whether you can save the console entries or not, because console is just a command line. You type in a command, it executes it and give you an output. So for saving purposes, the R script is very important.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so as I was saying, one of the features of this R Studio console or even R console is that this becomes helpful when you're writing long programs, but I'll demonstrate with a short program. Let's say you write a command 5 and you put minus and you don't give anything and press enter. Then what happens? So you see this angle bracket turns into a plus sign. What this means is that the console is expecting that you'll provide further input, because it knows 5 minus something else should also be there. So now if you put 2, then it will treat that 5 minus and 2 on the next line as a single command, and it will carry out the subtraction. Okay. Now let's say you're familiar with some command from some other programming language or at experience. Let's say there is this modulus command in some programming languages. It's a 12 modulo 5, and you expect it to give the remainder after dividing 12 by 5. Right. But already you can see one thing.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, can we continue that 5 minus in bracket plus 2?
So, okay, let's do one thing. I'll come back to this. You dictate the command. I'll enter it here and we'll see how long we can continue it. 5 minus, what's next?
5 minus in bracket plus 2. We get different signs, right? In that case, what we can do?
So you're saying if I put a bracket here and then put an enter, there's a plus here. Is that what you're saying? That it becomes a plus? Sorry, what is the source of confusion? Are you saying confused because of this plus sign which is appearing?
Sir, yeah, sometimes we get different signs, right? So in that case, how we can run here?
Different signs. So if it is
Like 5 minus in bracket, usually in mathematics we write 5 minus in bracket 2 plus 2.
yeah, so
Like
you can do that
Different
also.
sign you will get, right? Okay.
So let's say you have something else. Let's say 5 minus, I put a bracket here. Oh, sorry. 5 minus, put one bracket, not the other one. We will expect something and then I put minus.
Sir, for example, suppose we have a plus b. Okay, the value of b is minus 2
Yeah.
and value of a is 5. So 5 plus minus 2.
So you want to do 5 minus of minus 2.
5 plus minus 2.
So she's saying that 5 plus
Formula
in between
is-
and minus
yeah.
2 should be in bracket.
Yeah.
5 plus minus 2, right?
Yeah.
So this
So
will be
how
3.
we can run? Oh, it will come. Oh,
It will come, yeah.
yeah.
Just like a simple calculator also. And in the calculator, if you put a bracket, if you don't write 5 minus 2, but write 5 plus minus 2 within brackets, it will give 3. So similarly, this will also give you 3. And the thing about the long commands is that you can keep going for multiple lines. So it does not have to be just 2 lines short. So let's say 5 minus 2 plus 6 times 8. So it does the multiplication first. Now, even though you have written all of them in separate lines, it still follows the operator precedence that okay, multiplication should happen first and then addition subtraction. 6 times 8, 48, 5 minus 2, 3, and adds them together gives you 51. Okay, I don't want to scroll any further, so I'll clear the screen. Now, one thing I was saying about commands that R may not recognize. So let's say if I want to do 12 modulo 5. So this basically in other languages like C, C++, Python, etc. What this will do is give you the remainder. Correct, yes. But now you can already see one difference. So far, whenever I have put plus, minus, multiplication, whatever, not just the numbers, but also the operator was in color. Now this operator is coming out in gray. So that should already hint that there is something wrong with this. If you put enter, R will also say that this is unexpected input because it does not recognize this operation. So the good thing about R is that it is very detailed with respect to the outputs you will get. So every time you make a mistake, R will let you know. And the documentation is also very rich and healthy. So yeah, this is a very user-friendly interface.
And sir, how can I get the remainder in R? How can I calculate that?
So I think the command is double. Okay, wait. Okay, so basic application, and I think it is automatically assuming them to be float. I mean, based on this. So that is the content of actually next week's lecture. So the basic operations, so scalar operations and vector operations and all those things. So I think it's best to discuss them after the next week, during the next week's discussion, because you'll also get a chance to learn them in the lecture videos. So the primary goal of today's discussion was to get familiar with the interface. I mean, where we are working, how we are working. Okay, so we still have 8 minutes left, and I would request all of you that if you have doubts, then please go ahead and ask your questions.
Sir, I have one doubt, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, what is that meaning of that array of 1 when we get the output, the display, the array of 1 is 2.4. What is that array of 1? What's the meaning, sir?
This basically gives you a count of how many outputs you are getting. So like if you go back to this 1 to 6, if you are defining this range. Okay. This is, I think, counts the number of objects. So this counts this as a single object. But if I change this to 10 to 200, so then it sort of shows the matrix-like structure. So you start here with 1. So in the first line you have 15 objects. The 16th object is here. So then it starts the count here. Then again 15 more objects. So 30 objects have been covered. So 31st object is here. So this is just, for convenience, it can, while displaying the output, it can also show you where you are in the entire sequence, basically. So
Thank you, sir. Sir, how to clear the console file document?
So you press Control and L at the same time on your keyboard. Another option is, let's say I put something. You see this icon here? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that will also do the same job.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So any more questions, then please don't hesitate. Go ahead and ask, because next week onwards we'll start discussing. I mean, as the course instructor discusses more and more detailed topics, then these doubt clearing sessions will also become more detail oriented. We'll maybe start looking at some examples, how to solve simple problems and so on. But as far as the basic installation and getting familiar with the interface, as far as all this is concerned, if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask.
Sir, one more doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, we can see the history in the console file.
Yes. So if you click history, it basically gives you the command history. So this current session, all the commands that we have recently typed. So last command was 2 + 2, and you can match one thing. I'll press the up arrow key and it will take me back one by one. So 2 plus 2 was the last command. Before that we entered 10 to 200, 1 to 6, 12 divided by 5. Then this is basically line by line history of the console.
Thank you, sir.
So in the packages thing, you told now the ticked files are installed already, and which are not ticked, they are not installed in the application,
No,
right?
no. Everything that's listed here is already installed. The ones that are ticked are already available to the program, basically. So if I call a function from the base package, so sample, mean, all of them sit in the base package. So they are already loaded. So I don't have to load them. But let's say ggplot2, we don't have a tick mark next to it. So I'll have to execute this library ggplot2. If I press enter, now ggplot2 and all its functions are loaded. So now I can call any function.
ggplot2 in the packages options, but here in my Windows system, I can't even see the ggplot2 in the packages options.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
because
saying.
you have not installed it. So if you need to write this command install.packages, and then you put ggplot2 there. Then basically you'll be able to. Then if you restart your RStudio, then that will come up here.
Okay, I have to restart our. Okay, thank you, sir.
But remember one thing: when you first install a package, and if you want to, make it available in the same session, execute this command: install package.packages, name of the package in double quotes, and then immediately afterwards put library and then the name of that command. Okay. And from here you can, of course, check for package updates and so on.
So can we clear the history?
Yes, you can clear the history. You see, again there is this short broom-like icon, and if you click on this, it will clear all history and entries. History is gone.
Okay, sir.
So now if I click the up arrow.
So what is the meaning of loading the package?
So the meaning of loading the package is like when you install a package. So just like you installed RStudio, and then you clicked an icon, then RStudio started, right? And then you can do whatever RStudio allows you to do. So loading a package is similarly. Installing a package means that the package is now available in your computer. Loading a package means that now you can use the functions of that package in your R session or the project that you're working on.
Okay, sir.
So again, this will also carry over to R scripts, that if you want to call some base package, like some function from the base package like mean or sample and so on, then you can just call sample and execute the function. But if you want to call a command from a different package, not the base package, then within your R script also you have to write library and in parentheses the name of the package and then write the code. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it will show an error because it will not know what you are talking about.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, due to the bake package and all that, no, the R base. So what is the use of all this?
What is the use of?
All this, like the bootstrap function originally by like
So
the
they basically
R base package.
separate out different functionalities. So let's say you don't want to plot every time you every time you're working with RStudio. Let's say you just want to use it as a calculator, or you just want to compute some mean. You just want to get simple results and you don't want to have those plotting functions available. Now, one question could be, maybe all these functions can be available all the time, so why not? That is an option. There are two reasons behind this. When you load R, it starts to use some system resources, basically your RAM. So if you make a large variety of functions available every time you run R, it will end up occupying most of your RAM. So your computer will slow down, your machine will slow down, and as a result of that, your computation speed will slow down. So we don't want that to happen. The second thing is, again, for an open source project, continuous development keeps going on. That's why there are version updates. So you saw on the website also, there is R 4.2.1. Before that, it was 4.2.0, 4.1.3. So what happens in these version updates is that sometimes they add new material to the base package, new functions to the base package. And sometimes they also make available new packages. So people are continuously developing. So it happens this way. Sometimes when you're doing a unique analysis independent of other people, you come across a problem that you realize that, okay, this can be solved in a specific way, and I can collect my method of solving this problem into a set of functions, or I can make a package out of it. And you can feel that, okay, if I came across this problem, maybe other people can also come across this problem. So if this method solved my problem, this can solve others' problems as well. So you declare it a package, and then you upload it in CRAN, so other people can also use it. Now, at any given time, we don't know how many packages are there. The number of packages keeps increasing. So that's also another reason we can't make everything available, because we don't know what everything is. So that's why we need separate libraries, separate packages, which are built to solve specific problems, very well-defined problems. And you call them as you need them. Otherwise, if you don't need them, you don't call them. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Sir, I want to also ask, there is a code analysis tool for R. Something is written over there.
Sorry?
If you can change, there is something written as code analysis tool for R.
Code analysis.
Tool for R. Sir, this is for data analysis or we can use the normal one also for data analysis. Like we will be taught in this code that how to implement this in an Excel file or how to clean the data. Will we be taught about this?
Okay, so no, this is not about the advanced, applications. This course is a very basic course on the foundations of our software. So there are a lot of things that you need to learn, before you get into big data and the widespread applications of our software.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So if there are no more questions, then maybe we can end today's session because...
So one last question, sir.
Yeah, sure.
So what's the difference between the console and the terminal?
Terminal usually, depending on what kind of profile you are working with. So let's say if you are working with the root profile or as a specific user, terminal it allows you some bash scripting. So console, there are different categories. So all the consoles, there's something called terminals, there's something called terminal emulators, and each of them differ by some functionality. So for example, in the R console, you can't do something like make a directory. Let's say I want to make a directory called demo. Now this will not work here, but if I do that in terminal, terminal basically immediately gives me access to my own system. So this console doesn't have access to your entire system. This has limited access to a particular session of R programming. Okay, so you can sort of think of this console as kind of a subset. So for example, if you execute a Python command, if you have Python installed on your system, you open a terminal and execute Python command, you get the Python console where you can write Python specific code. So similarly, this R console is it's feature specific. You can do R related stuff, but you can't do system level things. So you can't make a new folder here, or you cannot change folders or create a file and so on.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So in addition to these weekly live sessions, there is also a forum available where you can post your doubts. So I think you may have received an email from onlinecourses.nptel.ac.in. Pardon me if I misspelled the website name, but you must have received an email initially, I mean, when you had registered for this course. So on that forum also, you can ask questions. And of course, you can collect your doubts from throughout the week. And if you have some doubt from a previous week, let's say in week 2 also, if you still have some doubts regarding this basic interface, feel free to ask those questions also. Okay. So if there are no more questions, then I'll end this meeting here.